All right, all right. So thank you so much for joining us, ladies, on the AfriCanadian Resource Center. We really appreciate you making the time. And so Mihret and Aden, we want to know more about you, what you do in the community. But first, maybe tell us who you are as an individual. Start from you. What's your name, your background, and what you do in the community?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mihret. I'm a community organizer. I am a mental health advocate, and I am currently part of an organization called Art and Health. I'm also an entrepreneur, so I'm doing a little bit of everything right now.
Absolutely. That's what we got to do in 2021. I'm not counting 2020 anymore. You've got to be an entrepreneur. We need solutions, and obviously non-for-profit is important, but we also need to figure out how to bring this into our daily life. So amazing. And we're going to definitely talk more about Art Plus Health, because that's why we're here. But let's talk more about us first. So you as well.
My name is Aden Abebe, and I'm an artist, a storyteller, and a community organizer. I got my background working in nonprofit sector in the city, usually working on youth projects and anything around youth development, mentorship, empowerment for the Black community and the Ethiopian community, the Eritrean community. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Art and Health.
Mm. So you are you, is there like the two co-founders, the two of you, right?
No, there's another co-founder.
Okay.
And she's one of my best friends, and we started the organization together. And she's since kind of handed it over and moved on to some other endeavors that she's really excited about. But she's a supporter of the movement.
And how did the idea of Art Plus Health begin?
The real seed of the idea was, what if we could talk about mental health over in Jeddah? That was the goal. Yeah. Both her and I had been very vocal in our community, talking about how mental health had affected our families and us as a result. And that was very uncommon and unheard of. So as a result of that, a lot of youth would come to us privately, asking for some counsel, some advice, and we would connect and like debrief on our day together, as best friends do. And we would just say, I met with somebody who wanted to talk to me about this, and she was like, oh yeah, someone else wanted to talk to me about that. And we just thought it's crazy how all these people think that they're the only one and think that we're the only other one that they could talk to and could relate to, if only we could have a space where all of them could be and exist and see that they're not the only ones struggling with this. And to do it over food, but not just any food, in Jeddah, because in Jeddah is such a communal experience, and it's an act of togetherness. And so our thought was, if we can share a meal together like family, then maybe we could also share some of our burdens with each other. So that's really how the idea started.
Okay, and so I know now you have Mihret as a part of the movement, as you call it. When did you connect to the Art Plus Health as an organization?
I'm gonna allow Aden to answer this one, because the universe kind of just connected us, and then we kept seeing each other throughout the city, and then we're kind of like, we need to speak, because we were doing a lot of the same things. We just haven't necessarily talked and connected and seen how we could work together.
And so what were you doing at the time then?
So I work in the mental health field. I was working with at-risk youth. So I go into different jails throughout Toronto and work with a lot of at-risk youth. So I was seeing a lot of over-representation of Habesha kids in there. And it really shocked me, because growing up, I didn't necessarily see where our community was struggling. I mean, personally, in our home, we had some struggles with my brother and sisters and things like that. But I didn't know it happened on such a grand scale until I got into the sector. And so I started to do little projects here, as well as like internationally. I was going back home to Ethiopia, whether it was building schools or getting actively involved on the ground there. And then I was also bringing...
That's a little project, right? Building schools in Ethiopia.
I just felt this connection. And I knew that like having a presence from someone who'd left there so young, and going back there and seeing that what's possible, and also knowing that it may not be the answer for all of us to come to North America, but instead build roots there so that they as well could do the things that I would had the opportunity to do here in Canada. So it was very important to me to always make sure I go back home and serve in any way I could. So here I was also actively bringing as many people as I could from these places that were impoverished, and I had a documentary screening to just showcase what was happening, whether it was people that were fleeing countries and going into parts of Sudan and things like that, and not having connections and what that looks like, and us being Habesha, how we can support those people. I had a documentary screening at U of T, I think it was, and then that's where I met Aden.
Okay.
Yeah. She's not even giving herself enough credit. Yeah. It wasn't just a screening. So she was hosting. She was part of a collective of just motivated citizens in Toronto who wanted to help sponsor someone from a refugee camp to come to Canada. And this screening was a fundraiser in support of sponsoring this woman from Sudan, or living in Sudan, who was also a young mother and was fleeing an abusive marriage. And so I went to this screening, which was a fundraiser, and the screening was also, everything is political. Everything is like a social justice moment. So the screening was about Eritrean refugees and the hardships that they've been experiencing in their migration journey. And hearing her speak and seeing her there, I was just, there was like something magical in the air, and I was like, I felt like God was like telling me something.
You gotta be part of this.
I was like, I need to talk to her. I feel like I need to know her. And we had seen each other over the years in places, but we never connected. And then I just went up to her afterwards. I was like, I think we need to meet for coffee. I think we need to work together on something. And she was like, yeah, okay. And then here's my number. And we kept trying to schedule a meeting, and she canceled the first time, then I canceled the second time, but we kept running into each other like everywhere else. And you apologized. You were like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, trust me, when it happens, something big is gonna happen. So it's fine. Whenever we end up meeting for coffee, I know that everything is going to work out. And we did, and then I pitched her. I was like, there's this thing we're doing. I think you need to be working with us. And she was like, okay. She's like, I get paid for this too? I was like, yeah.
Wow.
Like, oh, great. I would have done this for free. That's Mihret.
That's amazing. And I know there is more to her story, because me and Mihret, we speak, and you talked about like some of the work that you learned. Maybe I don't know if you mind going there, but like how your father sort of it was like a role model to you, and why you ended up doing some of the work back home. How do you think, maybe as a community, how do you think we are doing, especially now during COVID, and you both can answer this, how do you think we are doing to address the issue of mental health? And you can talk about in the East African community or as African community as a whole. How do you think we're doing?
I think COVID has heightened everything we were feeling before this. So I think we're struggling. I have a hope, because I think more people understand that this is an issue in our community. Recently, we were asked to join a group of advocates, I would say mental health advocates, to talk to our community. And there was 80 participants there from our community, which for me is mind-blowing. Like, I've sat and talked for like 2 people. Like, I'm used to the only one talking about like vulnerability or talking about certain mental health conditions. So to see 80 people on a call really inspired me on days that I feel hopeless. So I'm optimistic. I've been pushing this idea of like mental health wellness for a really long time. It's really important to me. It's pretty much everything that I am. But now that I see that our community is recognizing in a way, I'm just optimistic about it. But I do feel like we're struggling, and I do feel like we lack the resources to really do anything about it right now. So that's why we were at Art and Health, especially, like, we're always looking ways to find different, not even necessarily just Art and Health, but to equip other youth or other partners to do their own work, and how we can support them, because we know that like we can't do everything. That's not how we want it. We want to be able to call on another youth organization or call that's also supporting people and aiding them in different ways that we can't do at Art and Health.
And so looking at some of the work, and I'm extending that question to you, looking at where you were starting out as an organization to where you are now, how do you think Art and Health is prepared to answer that call? Do you think maybe you need to expand because, like Mihret is saying, we are struggling? Where do we go from here? Are we positioned, specifically for you as an organization, but also looking at it as a community, are we positioned to deal with what's coming? Because I know what we're going through is tough, but what's coming might be even worse because the economic challenges are going to be worse off. What do you think?
I think that there are a lot of big problems, and that if we look at the big problems and try to look at, like, address them as big problems, we will be crushed by the weight of them. What we have been able to do is to focus on doing small things well, and then duplicating that and multiplying that. So focusing on first trying out figuring out what the needs are. When COVID first hit, we hosted a Zoom call with Ethiopian and Eritrean community leaders throughout the city. We made sure to reach out to people who lived in different pockets in different regions. So we were like in Etobicoke, we were in Scarborough, we were in North York, in downtown, Leslie, all parts of the city. And I think we had maybe like 12 to 15 people on the call, and we're like, what is happening in your neighborhood? What is happening in your community? What are we hearing? And we heard that there was an injera shortage.
Okay.
It's a big problem.
we need to talk about injera for sure. Yeah.
There was an injera shortage because a lot of injera also gets, like, the injera is made here, but a lot of people like to buy injera that's imported from Ethiopia.
Ah, okay.
And they were not bringing any more like, it was not being delivered to Canada anymore. So there was a shortage in the city of Toronto, and we were like, okay, food, we can do something around food. And there were a host of other things that were named: housing, addiction, gender-based violence. And even though all these things were highlighted, we had to think of what is something manageable that we, in our capacity, there's three of us that work at Art and Health. What's something that's feasible that we could do and we can do well? And food security was something we knew that we could do well. So we started a program called Betasab, which translates to family. Okay. And it was to get food share food boxes to isolated seniors and the most vulnerable in our community who did not have access to food. And in addition to the food boxes, we'd also gave them a kilo of shiro, which is like a staple, curry powder.
Is that like to make the injera?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the stews that you eat with injera.
Oh yeah. I see.
Shiro, yeah. It's a chickpea stew. It's really delicious.
So reddish.
Yeah. It's like orangey.
Yeah.
And then we had the option of either giving them a bag of teif, which is the flour you use to make injera, or we would we hired mamas in the community to make injera, and then we would deliver it to different houses. So people who didn't know how to make injera, like me, would.
How do you not know how to make injera?
Okay, that's a different conversation. That's not
that's a different.
I told you we're gonna talk about injera. You should. Isn't that like a requirement for somebody who is Ethiopian to know how to make injera?
I mean, we're busy addressing the mental health issues of the community.
Okay, please.
I'm sorry we don't have time to learn to make injera.
I hear you.
But we made sure that there were options for people who wanted to buy ready-made injera or wanted ready-made injera, and those who wanted to prepare their own injera got TAFE. And that was a 5-week program that we delivered throughout the city.
Yeah. And what I think is powerful is the fact that you're working with other people like mamas in the community to actually prepare it. So even if you're spending money, it's going through the community.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, the fact that you're bringing people together during COVID, I think that was powerful.
Totally. Like for us also, the work is not just about what we can deliver in service, but also employment opportunities that exist. So the mamas were paid. We paid them to make it. We also reached out to Uber drivers or taxi drivers that that are probably getting less work to then do the deliveries of the injera. So everything is an opportunity to feed back into our community. And one thing I didn't mention with art and health, at the core of it, we believe it's very important that this be for us and by us. So the leadership in the organization and at our workshops, anything that we do, it's important that you see the representative that's coming to you and be speaking with any authority, be of the community we're serving. And that's just something I believe strongly when it comes to delivering a message that is as complex and sensitive as mental health and mental illnesses and anything around this very stigmatized issue. People feel like it's more legitimate when someone looks like them is sharing that information.
And even then you face a lot of hurdles. For me in the Rwandan community, I don't know if she told you my story, but I had to do a walk from Toronto to Montreal just to raise awareness on PTSD. And then now the challenge of now working within the community, talking to people, making them understand that this is something we need to face. We cannot pretend it's not there. That's another different topic, but I agree with you. There is no way it's done by someone from outside. It's just the things we go through, even when you're talking about dealing with psychiatrists, psychologists, all these people, we are looking to find a way as a center to get to the people that are our people. Of course, having certified psychiatrists and psychologists is, we don't have control over that. But we are looking at, how can we get maybe 10 years from now to the point where it's okay, all of these people are Rwandans. So it's important to have that representation. And also for the African community, the same reason why we brought the program is how can we connect with other organizations like Art Plus Health and so forth that are from the African community, that have the capacity to serve the community. So maybe my next question to both of you is, are we there in terms of, because I think all the time when we are trying to connect to these different African community organizations, we find that either the capacity is lacking, there is a lack of good governance, and for the ones that do, they are connected to outsiders, in this case, maybe Jewish community, depending on your background. There's always these other organizations that are making sure that you operate. How do we get to that level, maybe for Art Plus Health, how do we get to that level of having that collaboration long term, that we can actually rely on our own and then connect, of course we need to connect to the Canadians and everybody, but how do we actually sort of look at those dots and say Ethiopian, Eritrean, and maybe Kenya, and then beyond Africa, and then we can look to the Jewish and everybody else, but at least we have passed through the neighborhoods to get there. How do we get, how?
Do you want to take this one?
That's a really good question. I think it starts with being able to, as your community, being able to see what this organization is offering. And recognizing the work that they're doing, right? I think we need the buy-in from our community first before we start and recruiting other communities, because then once you get the buy-in from your community, then they'll be able to support the programs that you're having. One of the challenges that we have is a lot of our funding comes from grants. Grants require a lot. They have speculation. They have things that we can't do. So we're oftentimes finessing so that we can make things happen. But if it's money that was coming in from our community, then we know what the needs are for our community, and we have the trust of our community. We could just do it, right?
Unrestricted funds when they're donated.
So for that reason, I really think that it takes a lot of trust. I think we need the buy-in from specifically the Ethiopian Eritrean community. So then we could grow within what we're doing to make sure that we're giving back. I think as African people, we need to take responsibility for ourselves. I think it's time that we take ownership of things that we do. It's time that we start healing. And it sounds radical because we've almost been conditioned to ask for help. And it is important that we ask for help, but we also need to do the work ourselves, and we're capable of doing the work. Just based on art and health, we're very grassroots collective, but we've been able to connect with great minds. I'm talking about from the youth to the psychiatrists to the physicians to the storytellers that are willing to help support this healing and to help support this happen. But as a community, we need to come together, and we need to listen to each other, and we need to help in any ways, even if it's just with volunteering. For us, it's not always financial donations, but like giving us your time is really important. Showing up is even important. Like those things that are not necessarily financial, sharing like on social media platforms. There's the way you could show support to us as people who are running art and health, but by showing us support, you're really showing support to your community. Yes.
I'd like to add to one of the things that was always at the heart of when we started was we saw the opportunity of being able to expand to other communities. So the reason why we even named our organization Art and Health and not something specific to like being Ethiopian and Eritrean was because we knew that we had this idea that this model, we're going to learn and figure out a model that works on how to do mental health, education, training, resource bridging for a culturally specific community. And once we kind of figure out a model that we feel we're confident enough about works, because we're only 2 years in. This is a very new organization. But once we kind of get all the kinks out and figure this out, we want to bring this beautiful binder of knowledge of what we've learned in our pilot years to other leaders in different communities. We want to reach out to leaders in the Rwandan community and in the Somali community, in the Nigerian community, and say, hey, this worked for us for how to talk about like the nuances of stigma in our culture. We want to help support you in leading it, but we do not want to be the ones facilitating the workshop, because the power comes in seeing people of your community speak the words validating that mental health issues are real. So to what you were saying, it is our goal to be able to support and to help
to expand.
The rest of us.
And absolutely bring it, ask us, let's try it, let's see how it works. And to be honest, like there is nothing better, and you can testify to this. When you have a mental health issue that you go through, there is nothing better than the day you get to saying, I went through this. This is what happened. And share it, whether it's 2 people, 3 people, but when you actually get to open up to other people, that's when the healing begins. And I feel like for my community specifically, we have not been able to open, and it's, of course, it makes sense. We've gone through a genocide, but I think this is the time. And looking at the examples of your community, the Ethiopian community has done more work so far than any other community that I can see in the African community. We need to learn from other people. There was a research that was done by Toronto University. They went everywhere. They didn't go to Rwanda, which they did, but the stigma is still huge. So how do we break those barriers? And I know you guys can testify to this. What are the challenges maybe that you face for people who are not willing to open up about mental health in the community? If you're even willing to.
Where do we start?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, it starts with a safe space, right? We know being able to share your story is powerful, but there's also basic human needs that you need to fill before somebody can start talking about their serious mental health concerns. So addressing those basic needs is part of like what we want to do. So we can't just expect that people come to a kitchen table talk, which is one of our workshops, and they're going to divulge everything, right? That's not, but what we do is we create space that's safe, that's welcoming, and we always make sure that they have food in their stomach, because how do you talk about your mental health concerns when you're still hungry? So by cultivating that safe space is kind of the first step, and letting you know that, hey, our programs always start with her and I and the third person on our team sharing our personal stories, because we can't expect you to feel open if we're not open in the process, right? So those space, food, and then allowing them to live with something, which could be resources, the feeling of not judgment. We're an art program, obviously, so there's some type of art. Knowing that like that medium comes in different ways. It doesn't mean that you're going to speak it to me, but you might draw it to me, or you might draw it in general. You might write it in poetry, and that all of it is part of the healing process. So, and allowing them to know that we exist outside of us sitting here in this workshop, that you can have access to us on Instagram, because it's a process, right? Like, as you can speak to it, it doesn't happen overnight. That's something that we need, like, we need to scratch out and forget about. It's a process. So the first step is, like I said in the beginning, which is trust. Like, we have to get the buy-in from the youth. We have to get the buy-in from the parents. And it's by us being consistent, by us always constantly being, even during COVID, it was very important that we're responsive during COVID. We could have very much said, hey, let's pause the program because we don't have funding for COVID, and let's wake up when COVID's over. But that's not what we did. We went, hey, what's going on in our community? Like, this is the time where we need to make sure we step up, because we want to make sure that we're responding to our community needs. As much as like mental health is always at the forefront of what we're doing, we know there's other barriers and challenges in our community that we need to also address, so that we can start having the mental health, mental wellness conversations.
Amazing. And unless you want to add to that.
I just wanted to say that the people coming and walking into our workshops, that is a huge win in itself. To just leave your house and come says that you're open to acknowledging that there's something I want to know more about. For me, when I heard your question about like how can we talk to people who aren't as open-minded, I just think about like that's a really tough question, because if you're kind of like a stone, you know, like you're already closed off, then you're not gonna be receptive.
You need to be a sponge.
Yeah, you need to be more porous and more open to learning about these things. But most importantly, you also have to be willing to unlearn everything that you grew up understanding about what it means to have any type of illness that's not physical. Because so often it's spiritualized and it's demonized, and it just really reinforces an inferiority complex on so many different fronts. So I just want to acknowledge it is a huge win, one, to just even come into a workshop. That's already saying so much, and there's so much that we can do there. But for us, there are many points of entry to learning our information. Like she said, if we have our social media posts, someone who might not be open enough to come to a workshop might be open to like reading a graphic, you know? They might be open to having a conversation with us on Clubhouse, you know, about something that's not talking about mental illness, but talking about something that triggers your feelings about that we can then help support a conversation on healing. So there are many fronts that we're trying to be receptive on, and how to kind of get the message to people at different levels.
No, it's amazing. And you're talking about the artwork. I've been following you both. I mean, the Art Plus Health. Who does that? I think I know who, but who does that, and how can they keep posting every day? That to me is amazing.
Yeah, she is amazing. She is amazing. We have a social media manager that handles all of our beautiful videos and everything else. And Aden herself is an artist, so she's been on there too, featured. So her name is May Gazaheng, and she is a multidisciplinary artist. She does music, she does digital art, she does so many different things. She does videos, and so she creates all the graphics and sources all the information through research and makes all the original content that we have. So we're so grateful to have her, because for us, we knew when we were doing the program on mental health, it could sound sterile. It couldn't be just so drab and cold. And with my background in the nonprofit sector and programming, it was always an arts-based approach. That was the best way to really learn and to get people to digest that information and engage. And so we knew that we wanted to make sure that what we were delivering was easy to digest and visually beautiful, because I don't know, I think
we grew up like loving beauty. Like I think things are so much easier. It's easier to swallow a message if it looks beautiful.
No, absolutely. But that's how branding works, right? Obviously, we've sort of managed to brand all the bad stuff in our society, but anything, if you want to win over the audience, it's branding. So, and I mean, you know, like you say, you're in media, so you know. If you brand something a particular way, even if it's the worst thing in the world, people are going to gravitate towards it. So, no, to me, the posts that you guys do are amazing. I'm just saying, and also I'm thinking that as a person who's running a non-for-profit, having someone who can actually initiate an idea and design it and post it without you having to always provide the content, I mean, that's priceless, I think, because like for us, one of the challenges running even this project is always you have to send content, they do it, they send it back to you, you gotta confirm. But if you have somebody on board that's just take it on and
I think one of the things that was really important when we were able to get another person on the team was that at the very minimum, they have to have the passion of what we're doing, right? Like you're not making big bucks working at Art Health for sure, right? And so in part of like kind of doing our interviews, they have to like it almost weans out the rest because it's such a specific person that we would be looking for. Like not only would they like have to know the Habesha culture, but they also in some way I wouldn't consider myself an artist, but I know life is art, for example. Like I see life that way, so in that way like I connect to what we do. So when we found May, it was very easy because it was like, oh, did she work through our workshops already? Like, how is she speaking our love language? Like, so it was a really easy transition in, and the universe works in that way. Like, it aligns you back to the person that will feed your community, and she really does. You've seen her work.
That's amazing. And so you're saying you're not an artist, but we're all artists. The question is, do we want to actually? It's like a guitar. You gotta learn how to play that tune, however you play it, right? Whether it's through your words, obviously through your work, all the work you've done, I think it's art. You know, if you're thinking about building homes. By the way, talk about a little bit about that. How did you decide I'm going to pick up and go to Ethiopia at a young age, I would assume? How did you decide to do that? What got into your, sort of, how did you get that courage to do that? Because most of our young people, we just want to enjoy life here, like, you know.
Well, for me, I say it chose me. So I grew up in a home where my dad's a community organizer. He was very big on like us giving back. So I remember when I was really young, him and my brother traveled to Ethiopia and then they'd come back. And that Christmas, he tells us like, okay, you guys aren't getting Christmas gifts anymore. Devastating, okay? I could not get like the white running shoes that I needed to get so that I could show my people at school I was cool. But so I was devastated, and he's like, I'm taking what I would have given you guys for Christmas and I'm gonna put it away and we're gonna start building something back home to give back. I was angry, like, as you can imagine, I'm young. And then my brother, he was like, no, Mihret, you know, think about it. Those kids didn't even have a seat. They were sitting on rocks. Like, he was trying to be, like, compassionate about it.
So he got it.
Yeah, he was like, he was feeding me, right? But I hadn't been back since I was born there. So I was like, I was like, okay, whatever, right? Let's let him have it. And then I just seen what it looked like to just imagine it was like we would have spent $100 and he was just putting like $100 here and there. And then he gathered enough money. He also spoke to a place that he was working at and they gave him a little money. And I went and he was like, okay, we're gonna go back home and build this. So I went back home with it, back home at that time. And I remember at that time I was also having this identity crisis, right? Like I was born back home, but I live in Canada and I've assimilated very well in Canada, okay? I grew up in a small city in Windsor. So I'd almost forgotten, I felt like I was losing a part of that, even though my parents were very cultured. I just didn't feel like I connected necessarily to the culture in that way. Going back home changed that for me. It really, it made me have so much empathy for my parents because I started to see things and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why my parents do what they do and all these things. So things started to make sense. I started to realize, oh, you know, even when I was younger, I used to tell people to call me Mary. Like, Why? I don't know.
Is that
like,
your name?
No, because but I was like, Mihret is too hard to pronounce, right?
Okay. Yeah,
so it was like these identity mini crises that I was
by the
having
way,
back home.
I don't mean to cut you off. We all do that. When I was younger, Kizito seemed like a huge thing. So Kiz was the initial name, and I'm like, I got to a point where I'm like, no, call me my name. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So all these things that I was doing. So then when I went back home and I went with my father and I seen what he had done with just that little bit of money. And he built like an outhouse essentially where people could go and like there would be a library there and all this stuff. Like it was just for that community, this rural community, it was beginning to change their lives because they're like, wow, we have an outhouse now. We can go in there and read. Like, and then my dad was like, oh, we're not done here. We're gonna build a school, right? And I'm like, wow. Where are you gonna get the money to build a school? But okay, like, but at that point, I was in. I was like in it with him. So then he came back. He started a small organization called Voice for Hope. I became very active in it, and then we got connected with Rotary. We were able to build not only a school, we also built like a state-of-the-art hospital.
Say that again?
State-of-the-art hospital.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Right? And so it was just out of nothing we were able to do something so big, which then just really changed the trajectory of my life in a way, because I'd been working at that point in big corporations and I was like, I'm not having any impact here. I need to go grassroots. And that's how I've been ever since. Like, I really believe in grassroots work. I really believe in like frontline work. I feel like impact comes when we can literally pass it down to them.
When you know what's happening on the ground. So it's not always like, I think when you're in the corporate ladder world, there is a lot of words that are spoken, but it's not really connecting to actually what's taking place. And when you're on the ground, it doesn't even matter how you identify something as long as you're addressing it. So,
exactly.
Amazing. And so how do you, because I know also you're an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, and I'm going to get back to you as well. How do you go from believing and really working as a grassroots, like that's your mindset. How do you apply that as an entrepreneur? How do you then plan on approaching entrepreneurship that way?
Well, for me, it's kind of similar to kind of working at doing what we do at Art and Health, but knowing that, you know, even in the world of nonprofit, you're always giving so much of yourself, and you're supposed to feel guilty for wanting to have a little bit more and wanting, you know, for you to be like in a certain state of life. So I did a lot of like re-educating myself in terms of like what money really means or what money looks like and what financial freedom looks like, and that I can balance the two. And for me, that's when I decided to open a small shop called Haile. So we're literally celebrating different cultures. It's important for us to be able to go into those communities that I talked about, and be able to take what they're doing and sell it on this market, which a lot of other people are doing, but they don't look like them. So for me, it was important that I look like the things that I'm going to be selling. And in a way, and still be able to give impact. So a certain percentage of what we make always goes back to the community, whether it's empowering the women that are there to become entrepreneurs. Because one of the examples that I can tell you is when I was there, when I was in Ethiopia, I met a group of the women that weave the basket, right? And the precision and the amount of work it takes to make one basket is crazy. I actually went through with it because I was interested to know if they actually knew in terms of hours how long this was gonna take. And because I was thinking of like making this kind of like a business for them, I did a small assessment on what they were doing, and they were selling it for pennies.
And how they're spending hours making it and not really sort of valuing it based on the hours they were. And when you ask them, how much did you make? What was the profit you make off that? And they'd be like, oh, I can buy injera for like the day for my kids or something like that. So I realized it's not necessarily that they didn't have the skills, it's that they didn't have the education to be able to scale it in a way that was profitable for them. And I wanted to help with that. I wanted to be the bridge in between that. And that's kind of when like I started thinking like, how can I do that? So in my business, it's a social enterprise, so there is a
part that will always go into helping
Back to the
communities,
community, yeah.
just because that's who I'm always going to be.
Yeah.
But there's also this idea of, and Aden and I talk about this a lot, in that making sure that like we make sure that we pay our whoever works with us, we pay them fair wages. We always encourage them to be entrepreneurs or whatever that their mind wants them to do, and that they shouldn't feel guilty about it, because nonprofit shouldn't mean that you don't aspire for more, right?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I've been preaching. Maybe I don't do it so well because I'm also guilty of not actually looking at making sure you take care of yourself. So like in the non-for-profit, you're expected to help everybody. But when you think about yourself, it's like, no. And especially in our community, when you reimburse yourself for the work you do and you're in a non-for-profit, you're not looked at positively. And so that's why I always push, and I'm even venturing into that, really going into like, make sure you take care of yourself first. If you want to do a non-for-profit, maybe fund it with your own money. Obviously, grants are important, but how do we actually get to that level of I'm building my own thing, and if I want to support the community now, nobody can say, oh, you're doing it this way because it's your own money. So really, entrepreneurship is key for me in terms of what we do going forward. Of course, if you're a person that wants to do the 9 to 5, that's fine too. There is space for that. But I believe that we all have unique talents, especially when you start going through mental health. I feel like it's a calling to remind you, you know what, all of this is not you. Go find something that makes you happy. So I think that being able to actually stand in that, in your own shoe and be proud of it and encourage other people, of course, for you, reminding other people, women back home, listen, you're putting in so much hours, you should value the work that you do. Of course, that doesn't happen without the involvement of government, but it can take just somebody like you to do that as well. So I commend you for doing that.
Thank you.
You know, and I mean, I want to go back to, maybe one day we can visit the Ethiopia and see that the school and everything that you guys have, the hospital, you know, but incredible.
I hope so.
Yeah. So.
Oh, can I ask a clarifying
Yes.
question
Yes.
from what you said earlier?
Yeah.
When you said you and your dad built an outhouse, but you were saying it was where people read?
Yeah, they used to go in there to read, but now they have a full library.
Okay. Because when I hear outhouse, I think of like Shindari.
Yeah. That's how it was originally, because they didn't have
Okay.
the money, so they were going in there to read. But then when we came in, we rebuilt the outhouse and made it into a full-blown library.
Oh, okay. Because I wasn't getting that from earlier.
Oh.
I kept hearing like we built an outhouse and people would go and read there, and I was like, maybe an outhouse means something different than what I know.
Oh, no.
Okay, so you converted, you rebuilt an outhouse, and then you built a library. That's so dope.
Amazing. Yeah. Good stuff. I know. Right. I definitely, those are the things that, to me, I think as Africans, because obviously literacy is a huge challenge. So being able to do something like that back home, man, you know?
Yeah,
And
it's
I'm
definitely one of those things that...
Yeah. And you're thinking of the people, obviously, also, the capacity, who is doing the teaching, who is bringing the books in, you know?
I think that it's part of... I personally feel like part of diasporas, it's one thing that we should all aspire to do. I don't think I feel like, although we had this opportunity to come to the West, it's part of like our almost like our reparations to where we're from, to make sure we continue to not forget about them.
Yeah.
So I will always encourage that, and although I'm speaking about Ethiopia, I do involve myself in other parts of Africa, just because I don't think we do a good job of like interconnecting.
Yeah.
So I've been to I haven't been to Nigeria, but I've worked on things that support things that are happening in Nigeria, because I feel like we can learn from each other and grow from there, like as Africans.
Absolutely. And I think we also learn, if you look at other communities, you can always learn also what's not done well, and compare to where your country is, and you say, okay, well, I know we're not there yet, but at least we have made some strive compared to, you know. And I always do that too with my country compared to other countries. Obviously, there are things that I know we need to improve on, but also you look at the strive, you're like, okay, this is good. Let's build on this. Let's have some positivity about where we are. So yeah, it's very important to do that. Yeah, so amazing. And now I want to hear from you about same thing, but also talk about your art, your involvement in the art world. You know, we were talking off camera earlier about your project that you're doing with CBC. Tell us a bit more about that, and how did you involve, or how did you start out as an artist? Because I'm thinking that's why Art Plus Health was born, was also part of you being an artist.
Mm-hmm. So where do I start? We can cut this part out.
Yeah, we definitely can. Go ahead.
I guess my journey as an artist started with photography, and I started getting into photography when in like 2010. But the truth is, looking back, I always was obsessed with cameras. I was always the photographer in the family, taking the family photos. I was always criticizing the photos that were developed. Like, why did they do it like this? They should have done it like this. So I've always had an eye for detail in that way. And I guess when I was like maybe 20, I think was when I started getting into photography. And I did a couple programs. I had a mentor from the community, which was really cool. And I had an exhibit that I did. It was called the Salem Visual Arts Festival. And I did the series that I did was about mental health. And that was the first time I ever talked about mental health. And it depicted a Ethiopian family. We can't really tell if they're Ethiopian or Eritrean, but like a Habesha family. Yeah. And the mother was like frozen still, and everyone else around her, all her family members, were moving very quickly in motion. And no one was really kind of noticing that she's not moving and she's kind of stagnant. And the series was called Mental Health: A Mother's Burden, and it was about depression. It was trying to depict depression, but also what it looks like living in the West, where it's a very individualistic society, and oftentimes people are so consumed, we ourselves can get so consumed in what we're doing ourselves that we don't see what is happening to people closest to us. And that came out in 2011. That series came out, and that was the first time I ever told a story using art. Before then, I would just take pictures of cool things. But when I did that, I realized, oh, I can tell a story, and I can come up with a concept, and people look at it and understand a story I'm trying to tell with images. And it was like, okay, I think I have something here. And people also were very like emotionally receptive to it. People were like staring and crying just looking at it. So that was, in a weird way, encouraging as well. That I could tell a story that was personal to me, and other people also felt a personal connection to it. So then I guess fast forward to 2016, I had another idea to create just an idea for art. And I tried to imagine making it into a photo series because that was my medium. And it just didn't make sense. I was like, no, this is like, so much is happening. There's like a moving story here. Okay, I guess it has to be video. Wait, you don't do video. How am I going to make a video? And then I realized, wait, there needs to be words. It's a conversation. I've never written script, so I need to learn how to write dialogue. And so I started this journey of just writing a show. And it's about so I started writing a show about 4 East African girls in Toronto, awkwardly navigating adulthood as millennials. They're in their 20s, and love and relationships as virgins. And the series is called Virgins. And this is a dramatic comedy. It's not a documentary. A lot of people think it's a documentary or like a reality show. And I'm like, no.
Like, neither one of them are actual. Never mind.
We don't know. They're acting. It's a comedy. So I just wanted to tell that story because I understood it very well. And so I started writing it, and I got into a couple like opportunities where became open to me. I got to go to Colombia in South America and do an artist residency there to write the show. I ended up writing a bit of it in Europe because I just ended up getting to go there. And by the time I came back, I had the idea like, okay, I think I need to like film it. Just film a concept trailer.
And this is what do you have? Is it like a pilot or just a trailer you're looking at?
At this point, I had like just like the overall outline of the story. But I was still really nervous about my writing as a writer because I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know anything about this.
Did you write another script or did you just like,
I
did you have
started
an
writing.
idea of how scripts work? Or?
I tried. I was
Did
like,
you Google something? Like,
I Googled my favorite TV shows, scripts, like pilot scripts, and I like studied them and broke them down and tried to like learn from it for free because I couldn't afford anything at the time. And I started writing, and then I was like, I think I need some help. Why don't I enlist some of my friends who like to write and like let's put this together. And so we came up with this this concept trailer that we ended up shooting in January 2018, and we edited it and released it on Valentine's Day.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So we released it on Valentine's Day, and we tried to like build a following and get people excited about it. And there was some excitement. There was about we had a few thousand views on those videos, 5 videos. On our YouTube channel. Virgins the Series is our YouTube channel.
Check it out.
But that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we used that to pitch to CBC. And CBC was like, we like it. You want to sign with us? And we were like, sure. So, so now they've been supporting us. We were in development with them from the beginning of this year. And then we just got greenlit for production financing. So now we are officially like gearing into season 1 production for next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I know, like for somebody, we have a background in film school, right? The difficulty of getting on any network, and for somebody who didn't go to film school, I asked you this question earlier, to be able to actually be in that world. That's what I talk about when I talk about entrepreneurship. You didn't need to go to school to do this.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, it's very nerve-wracking starting from zero and like your competition or like the peers beside you.
But the thing is, I'm thinking you didn't even think about the competition at the time. You're just thinking, I gotta do this.
I don't believe in competition. I don't. I just believe what's yours is yours, and just focus on what you're doing, and you'll get to where you're supposed to be. No one can take what's yours. So
it's called blue ocean. If there is any competition, you just swallow them by being greater than them.
I mean,
taking your space, as you say.
I believe in abundance. There's enough for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
And so I want mine, and I want you to have yours, and let's all rise together and make some money.
That's good. So when can we expect, or is it on air now? When can we expect to see it on where?
So the old, like our old trailers, I mean, they're cute. Like, it's from 2018. Are available on our YouTube page. We filmed a new demo this summer. I directed it, and that was part of our new application process that got us our funding, and I showed you that link. So,
for the audience though, where do we go?
It's going to be on CBC Gem. We don't know when it'll be released. I'm hoping for fall next year, 2021.
But also now I'm curious, how do you shoot in COVID? During COVID?
There are a lot of rules. There are a lot of procedures. We had to have like a whole procedures handbook that we developed and then had to get approved by CBC. There are a lot of productions that are filming in this time. It's just everyone has to wear PPE. People need to get tested. Every day when you come on set, you have to get your temperature taken. People are wearing gloves. People are wearing masks. Some people are wearing masks and visors. When we shot, it was summertime, and we had to take a 10-minute break every hour so that people could go outside and get some fresh air drink water to
Wow.
stay hydrated, because the more hydrated you are,
The more your immune system and all that, you can fight off the...
exactly.
Yeah.
And we encourage people to change their masks. So we made sure we had all of that available for people.
Yeah.
You also have to have a COVID, like you have to hire somebody whose job is just COVID supervision.
Okay.
And they have to check in on people and help.
Like how you have
measure them.
continuity, you need somebody for COVID. Do they have to be an expert, like a doctor, nurse?
They don't have to be they don't have to
just
be a
have to
doctor.
understand the process.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there are courses that you could take. There was a course from Charles Street Video that taught that, and so we made sure that our person that we were hiring took that course.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Remind us again, the Virgin, Virgin, what's the name of the
It's
show?
called Virgins, yeah.
The Virgin.
My favorite thing about the name was people get so nervous to say that word, virgins, and by making it the title of the show, it normalizes saying it, and it doesn't feel like.
But I mean, it is everybody begins there, so it's
everyone's been a virgin in their lifetime.
Exactly.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So anyone can relate to these experiences.
No, I'm definitely gonna check it out, and again, congratulations.
Thank you.
And all the best. I look forward to seeing it on the big screen. I mean, CBC. Those are the big dogs. For people who don't know, those are the big dogs in Canada. It's not just CBC is a top notch. And congrats on that.
Thank you.
So now let's go back on obviously Art Plus Health. You are being an artist, you having a background in what will you call? We'll call you a philanthropist. We just now need some of her money to build more more hospitals. Now putting all that together, where does Art Plus Health go? Looking forward, obviously beyond COVID-19. Like, what's the big vision for the organization?
I think we have, right now, we're such in this response moment. Just
emergency response. We're just.
Yeah, and as Aden was mentioning, we're 2 years old. So when we the first year was us figuring out what art and health looked like, right? And then the second year is the first year was by the end of it, we're like, oh yes. Let's go. Let's do this now. Yeah. And then the second, before we get into our second year, it's COVID hits.
And everything we figured out doesn't work in a COVID time.
Yeah.
So it feels like we're in a pilot year all over again.
Does it feel like you're in a relationship where you get to the second year and you're like, wait, what the hell is happening? COVID sort of reminded you of, okay, now we got to figure this out as we go, right?
Yeah, so we've actually, this year has been doing a lot of pivoting. We've become a lot of what we do has become online. And we're running the programs. We have the one that she mentioned, which is Beta Sub. And then we also are now running another program for youth, which will help them with food share boxes, and also help them towards their Wi-Fi and internet, because we think that this is essential, especially right now, given that students are still in school, but that means they're using their internet at home. So we just want to help them in support of that. But at the same time, we're still doing our check-ins, which are called mahabar, which means together. And we have that via Zoom, where we just as a community come together and feel each other out. How are you feeling? All these other things. So this plan that we thought we could come up with in the second year, figuring out how do we sustain as an organization, it's on a little bit of a pause, because we're really in real life responding to the needs. And I mean, that's always what we envision art and health being, is we don't want to ever get to the point where we don't see what's happening on the floor. Yeah. So COVID has kind of, in a way, has blessed us, because we're learning it, where we didn't actually have to read this somewhere where they're like, oh, there are situations where you have to be able to pivot and all this, that. Yeah. It was like, no, girls, you need to pivot. You need to figure it out, because you went from, not only are you, your workshops have to be in person, because you guys eat food together. Everything the thing that me and Aden used to always tell people is you just have to come. You won't know what a kitchen table talk is until you've experienced it. Yeah. So now having to do that online is how do we bring that same feeling to the virtual world? Yeah. So in that way, we're I think what we're learning now is going to help us in however we continue to grow art and health. It's actually been, like I said, an added blessing for us, because it's really teaching us how to be as responsive and not so rigid in what this organization looks like, because it's not for us. It's for our community.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've been a part of organizations, especially non-for-profits, where as an advisor or as a volunteer, you get there and you realize there are certain things you want to do, but they don't allow for that to happen. So you're sort of stuck in that little box, and you're saying you want to make sure that doesn't happen for your organization. Go with the need of what's happening at the moment, right?
Absolutely.
And so now, obviously, definitely keeping with that, how do you, but like, what is the vision? Let's say, do you have a vision in 10 years? Like, what does that look like? What does Art Plus Health look like? Is it like maybe going back to, are you expanding into other communities? What does it look like from your view?
So our overall vision, like our vision statement, is to transform the cultural response to mental health. What we know about, our communities and a lot of African communities is we're so good at doing community. We're so good at being there, showing up for each other through the hardest of times, through grief, and the best of times, weddings. We show up and we show out, and it's so beautiful. But imagine like what could happen if we showed that same sense of community and support during someone having like a mental health crisis, as opposed to being scared or turned off and just almost like a social exile, if we rallied around and supported them in that same way. So that's our vision statement, transforming the cultural response to mental illness. And I also want to add that when we started Art and Health, we really saw this as our entry point was talking to youth. Like, we're young, we look like youth, we're not.
Oh, you're youth. You're still young.
Sure. Yeah. But we saw this we started this off as a youth program, and that would be our main demographic. And there were several reasons. One, they're very receptive and aware, and they want to educate themselves on all things mental health. So they were just an easy demographic to also work with. But our dream was always to have an intergenerational programming and connection to the community. And by what COVID has done for us is through focusing on the social determinants of health, meaning like food security and access to internet and all these other things other than the end all, which is like mental health and mental health crises. It has allowed us to get into the homes of the elders and parents and seniors, and now they're starting to get familiarized with us, and they're not learning about us as like, oh, those are those kids who like are about psychiatry, instead they're like, oh, these are the kids who are like helping the community and bringing us in Jara and like being so thoughtful. And so when we then want to like reach out to them about something else, maybe like, oh, we have this like this Zoom call where we're going to be talking about parent and child relationships and communication strategies, they're going to be like, oh, okay, we know them, we trust them, they're cool, so that's also one of the blessings that has happened through expanding our focus to social determinants of what will affect people's mental health. And so I would say for the vision of where we're going is trying to have intergenerational programming be not for it to just exist, but to have like a really true and honest engagement with all demographics in our community, and then that also being part of this beautiful package that we get to then reach out to other communities, because we have had people reach out to us from the Sudanese community and from other communities saying like, I've seen what you're doing online. There was a death and there was a suicide in our community, and we don't know how to talk about it, and people this, that, and it's actually causing a lot more harm by not talking about it, and I don't know what to do. And we're like, I'm so glad you reached out to us. Like, this is what we know so far. This is what has worked so far. And we're excited to share like our models
Whatever
and our approach. Yeah, this is about healing. We want
listen,
heal.
the RSHC, we're not there yet. I've told you before, we really, as far as mental health, which is our core component, PTSD, we're not there yet. We're not there in terms of opening the doors and providing the services that you do, but we definitely will be reaching out to you guys, because I mean, I've said the work you're doing is the entry point, and that's where we struggled. Personally, I struggled. I didn't know how to open those doors, the conversations, and talking about how you say, you know, provide the services and people can actually talk about other things, but first, make it so they're comfortable being there. That's something that we want to learn, and yeah, so we'll be reaching out to you. You know, hopefully, I don't know when, but we definitely will be reaching out to you. And amazing, keep doing what you're doing. I don't care, you say it's 3, it looks like 100 people doing the work that you do. You know, yeah. So maybe let people know, where do we go? Obviously, at Plus Health, where can people find you? How can people be part of the work that you do?
Great, yeah. So our website is arthealth.ca. Our Instagram is arthealth.ca. Our Facebook is arthealth.ca. We've tried to keep the branding consistent, so we're very easy to find. When you visit our website, we also have a mental health directory, and keeping in line with this whole for us by us approach, our mental health directory is full of mental health professionals of different distinctions and designations who are either Ethiopian or Eritrean. And you can also search by language. So if you have an elder who doesn't speak English and might be more comfortable in any of the languages offered, you can search by language, you can search by gender, whatever is most comfortable for you. And the best part is you don't have to call us and ask us to connect you, because some people, they want the anonymity. They don't want people to know that they're looking for that type of help yet. So this also gives them the agency to empower them to go do it on their own in quiet and silence, and take care of themselves.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
See, more reason why I need to reach out to you, because that language thing, also having the anonymity, being able to, for people to actually reach out and get the support without even me knowing or anybody, that's amazing. That's, I think, one of the things where we can get rid of the stigma and just go direct to what do I need. Yeah, anything you want to add?
No. I accept that. I love everything that you guys are doing here. I'm a big fan of yours. So anything that we can support in you in continuing to grow whatever you have going on, we're happy to do it.
No, amazing, and we look forward to this. We look forward to, like, for me, if there's anything that moves me, and I know the RSHC is the same thing, is seeing other African Canadians. And sometimes I say African Canadian, people are like, oh, why are you dividing people? No, it's because I feel like our people are behind the curve. And if we can get anywhere close to where the curve is, at least now we can talk about everybody. So seeing everybody from the African community succeed, or at least trying to succeed, moves me. Everything I'm doing, everything I've ever done for the last maybe 7 years is towards that. And so seeing this level of, I'll say excellence, I know you're working, you're pushing, but there is some excellence, there is a level of excellence here that we don't see in so many other African communities. And so, amazing. Amazing.
I mean, I do want to add one thing, because this is the real reason why I got so connected to you. And I share this a lot, is because of your personal story, right? I have brothers, so I have a kind of soft spot, right? And I've always grew up with them having a hard time expressing what they'd gone through, right? And the first conversation I remember having with you, you were so vulnerable. And that's everything we try to teach our youth, or anyone even in my circle, is by sharing your story, you really get people to open up and share about their story. So once I heard your story, I was sold. I'm like, you could have told me to do anything at that point. I'm like, I'm all in. Like, let's go. What army do you want me to get on, right? So I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're a Black man, African man, doing the work, and you're encouraging other young people that are looking up to you to do the same. So we got to keep,
Now, if that's what I have to do, if what I have to do is tell my story, I'm going to tell my story 1,000,000 times. Honestly, it frees me. It frees me. I learned that the hard way, but there's nothing better than telling your story. As painful as it is, there's nothing better. So I appreciate that. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.